with the baseball trade deadline a couple of weeks away. Buster Olney back here on the Rich Eisen Show. How are you, Buster?
I'm doing great, Rich. Good to talk with you. As I told you, whenever I talk to you, I get extra credit in the eyes of my 19-year-old son who just loves your work.
You know what, Buster? Dad points are the best points that you can possibly get. I'm honored that I can actually deliver that to you. So what's your son's name again, Buster?
His name is Jake. He's a huge Titans fan. He grew up in Westchester County. He's a fan of the Titans, Hornets, and Braves, so he's a weird kid.
Okay, I'm going to bite on this. Growing up in Westchester County, how do you love the Tennessee Titans? Or was it the Oilers predate him? So I don't what gives, Buster?
Well, his first name is Jake, as I mentioned, and his first fantasy football team, he had Jake Locker as his quarterback, so that locked in the Titans. With the Braves, he was a huge fan of Chipper Jones and then Freddie Freeman. Mm-hmm. He did a book report on Freddie Freeman, so he was locked in there. And with the Hornets, as I said, I think he just, he figured he was rooting for all these teams down in the Deep South, and he just he continued that trend.
Well, Buster, I found a unicorn. I'm sure you believe your son is a unicorn because he's your son. But I found the first person who Jake Locker didn't turn off on the Tennessee Titans. That's impressive. That's wow. That's very impressive. I wish the quarterback's name was Jake Brady for your son's sake. But let's just jump into the world of baseball. Where does the Ohtani situation reside as you and I are currently talking, Buster?
Yeah, at this moment, he's not available for trade. The Angels have communicated to all the teams that they're willing to listen, which is not a change off their stance since he joined their organization. At some point, Perry Manassi, their general manager, will collect that information. He'll take it up the line to Artie Moreno, the Angels owner, and then Artie will make a decision whether or not he's going to okay a trade. Last year, the Angels front office went through that process, and when the information was taken to Artie, from what I understand, went crazy. He was furious that the front office actually engaged in any of that because he thought it was unthinkable. And it's part of the reason why, I ask executives of other teams who are not pursuing him, hey, what do you think they're going to do? What do you think they should do? Unanimously, people with other teams are, of course, they should trade him to get value before he becomes a free agent, especially a player that valuable. And with the Angels struggling the way they are, playing about 500, not really seemingly equipped to make the playoffs this year. And I also get back, and they probably won't because Artie is stubborn, and trading a guy, you can understand this part of it, trading a guy having arguably the greatest season any player has ever had and perhaps delivering him permanently out of Anaheim, that's kind of a frightening proposition, and they don't expect that Artie's going to change his mind before we get to the deadline.
Well, but one would think performance around him and support of him roster-wise will drive him out because they aren't winning again. So it's not that they're going to trade him out. It's just that the results might cause him to leave, right? That's the alternative of it. It's like, yeah, you don't want to trade the best player of all time, but if the best player of all time is going to leave you with a compensatory pick, you better trade him, Buster.
That's exactly right. That's how people with other teams view it. It's a no-brainer that you can't have a talent like this, a potential trade piece. Because, any team that would acquire him, the Rangers, the Tampa Bay Rays, the Yankees, not only would they'd be getting one of the top 5 hitters in baseball, but they'd be getting a guy who could start game 1 or game 2 of the postseason. And so whatever the haul is, it would be pretty dang good, and it would help the Angels to get better moving forward. And your point about him and the lack of support around him and the lack of a roster around him is really important because what you hear about Ohtani is that as time has gone on, he's gotten more and more frustrated with the fact that they're not winning, that they haven't been able to win, that they haven't been in the playoffs in almost 10 years. And when he becomes a free agent, you talk with folks with other teams, they don't expect that Ohtani is going to return to the Angels. And given that reality, right, the choice is between getting, major league ready players or young major leaguers or getting draft picks that might not see the big leagues for, 3-4 years.
If this was the NBA, Ohtani would have probably been on a podcast somewhere announcing his intention right? If this was the NFL, the Twitter account of this player might announce his intention or show up on a podcast too. What is his world like? Like who's counseling him? What approach are they taking here? What do you got for me, Buster?
Yeah, and it's a really good point. He would unfollow the Angels or something like that, right? Something really super passive aggressive.
Yeah.
From what everybody says about Ohtani is that his whole life, every day, is about baseball. He lives within walking distance of the ballpark. He goes over there. He gets his treatment. He goes through, the regimen that he has, throwing on flat ground on the days that he doesn't pitch, or taking 20 to 25 swings, doing everything he can to prepare to play. But there isn't really a lot more than that. The Angels don't ask him to meet with sponsors. And you've been on the field, Rich, where, before a game, you'll see Aaron Judge go over and shake hands with the best friend of Hal Steinbrenner who's there with his 3 kids. The Angels ask Ohtani to do none of that. He does none of that. He makes himself available, to reporters very once in a while, as opposed to most players who are available pretty much every day. And so it feels like that his focus is on baseball for now. And as one general manager said to me, anybody who pretends to know what Ohtani is actually thinking is full of garbage. And he just cited the last time he went through this process, when he chose the Angels, he shocked the baseball world. And so what all these teams are doing now is effectively trying to read tea leaves and trying to guess what he wants. The general perspective, when you talk to general managers, head of baseball ops around the sport, is that they believe that he wants to play in Southern California, and that the last time around, if the Dodgers had access to the DH, then that would have been his first choice. That's what they believed. Instead, because at that time, the National League didn't have the DH, he winds up choosing the Angels, playing in Southern California, and having the experience he has, they do expect that the Dodgers are going to be very invested in the pursuit of him in this offseason.
Well, I guess if he was a Dodger, he couldn't walk to work, or he'd have to walk to work, I guess, to get there on time, I guess is the way I should put it. But right. I am seizing on that nugget there, Buster, Olney, because this is the crux of it, is what does he want? What does Ohtani want? Because if he does want to play baseball where he can be anonymous, where he can literally walk to work past, whatever strip malls are around the stadium, or, and I guess cross the street as people are trying to drive to Disneyland, right? Like if he walks to work and then doesn't have to meet with reporters more than just once every couple of days or whatever, and the front office doesn't ask him to do the dog/pony, then a New York franchise, Boston, that doesn't work. Like that Philly, that ain't it. I mean, it's the exact opposite. It's you are the center of attention, and every time you pitch is a circus, like Dwight Gooden. Like that's it. And obviously, for the Dodgers, it would be like Fernando Mania, Nomo Mania, or something like that. But one would think he would still have to do a little bit more. So the question is, what does he want? What does he like? Does he like this, even though it does come with the unfortunate aspect of not winning because of the way the Angels are built? Buster?
And I think you framed it exactly right. And you also are, raising a lot of the questions that are being asked in front offices right now. If he were to sign with the Yankees, and by the way, or any of these teams, for, let's say it's $600 million, because that's the number you hear thrown around a lot by front office people these days, $600 million. I can tell you this, having covered the Yankees, there would be an expectation that he would make himself available. And if he went 0 for 5 and struck out 4 times, the culture in that, in that organization, in that city, would be that he would come out and do the perp walk and say, I stink, and as Giancarlo Stanton did, especially early in his time. And that's how he would handle things. And yes, that he would, meet and greet and do all that stuff. I think it would be the same with the Mets, or it'd be the same with the Red Sox. I do think if he were to sign with the Dodgers, that they'd be able to protect him in a couple ways. One, I don't think the media frenzy is as intense as it is in the East Coast. And the other thing, too, is he'd be playing alongside Mookie Betts and Clayton Kershaw and Freddie Freeman. And so I think there would be some protection there.
Yep.
And let's face it, there's enough stories too, Rich. By now, people know sort of what he prefers. And yes, for $600 million, they probably want more than what he's giving the Angels in terms of the dog and pony stuff. But they also understand what's been successful for him and what's worked for him when he's been with the Angels.
Well, and I guess with all of this being discussed, Buster, between you and I right now, would you be able to hammer out all of the expectations as you're trying to acquire him mid-season, right? I mean, wouldn't there be some sort of talk that would have to go down between team that acquires him or gives the Angels something that would make him think, or Artie Moreno think? Wouldn't there have to be some conversation about how happy he would be with that development, and thus prospects going back and forth might be enhanced if you get a better answer from Ohtani, right?
I don't think if he's traded midseason that would be part of the conversation.
Okay.
The team that would be acquiring him, for the last 2 months would basically, I think, follow up on what the Angels have done, which is, you know what, let him go do his pitching stuff, let him go do his hitting stuff, and we're going to leave him alone, make him available with an opening press conference, and then if he does something extraordinary in game, then he would speak to reporters. But besides that, not much more. As a free agent, I think that moves closer to what you're talking about, that there would be a conversation of, yeah, we'd like him to do this. But I would say this, like Ohtani has special rules. There's no doubt, the phrase that I've been using in our internal conversations is he's got a lot of autonomy.
Nice.
Within the Angels. He does his own thing. And I think that he's such a great player that, let's say, if the Dodgers had a chance to sign him and his agent were to say, yeah, he doesn't like to do the media more than once or twice a week, the Dodgers' response might be, yes, sir, may I have another?
Probably. No, I'm sure. And you're right. With Betts and everyone, it's the cupboard's not bare. He's just one of many stars. He just would stand out because of who he is. A couple more on this subject matter, and then we'll move on, if you don't mind, Buster Olney. So first things first, what you said at the outset of this dialogue, Artie Moreno chastised his front office for doing due diligence on the Ohtani front. Why would he do that last year? Why?
Well, I think he was, from what I understand, and this is, I've heard this from multiple sources, that he was surprised that they had gone through that process because he had no interest in trading Ohtani. Which is kind of silly because this time of year, when general managers talk with other teams, when front office people talk with other teams, they ask about everybody. They cover every possibility because they don't want to be surprised. Which is why the reports of the Cubs and the Yankees had a conversation about Cody Bellinger. Yeah, they talk about every player, and so I think that Artie was surprised, from what I understand, that this was brought up in the first place by the Angels front office.
It's just like, hey, bud, like, this is the reality of the situation. Yep. And I would want my staff to be buttoned up and fully aware of every possibility and have it placed in front of me, rather than like, how dare you consider it? Like, are you out of your skull? Like that one kind of surprises me. And then, what's the most impressive thing you've seen Ohtani do with your own two eyes, Buster, where you're just like, okay, that's just not normal? What do you have for me there, Buster?
Yeah, and there'd be a lot of competition for that, for sure. And real quick, just to double back on the Angels, sure. What you also hear from other teams is that the best time for them to trade him would have been last July.
Oh, sure.
Because you basically could have restructured your whole franchise with the possible return. And so whatever they get this July, if they were to trade him, would be, 60 cents in the dollar, because it's only one pennant race versus two. Yeah, so watching him run, I always love when he runs to first base, because he's so big and he's so fast. The rooster tail that pops up behind him is incredible. Like, he's throwing dirt 12 to 15 feet in the air when he pitches. The fact that he improved his command so much from 2021 to 2022, that was crazy. The other night when we had him on Sunday Night Baseball, the sound of a ball he hit, and
That's
I think
right.
it wound up being a foul ball.
Yep, foul. Yep.
It was so loud on the field. It jumped out to Eduardo, Perez, and David Cohn, my colleagues, who who know a lot more about this than I do, and they were like, "Oh my God, that was so loud." But the part that I love about him, which is so underrated, is how competitive he is. Phil Nevin, his manager, told us a story the other day that when they went to Yankee Stadium, Ohtani usually takes batting practice inside rather than outside, but he made a couple of exceptions this year. He hit outside at Yankee Stadium, and Phil joked to him, "What are you doing, auditioning?"
Yeah.
But when he got there, Phil, who had been, of course, the third base coach of the Yankees before and had seen Judge and Stanton take BP there, Ohtani asked him, "Where did Judge hit the ball? Where did Stanton hit the ball?" And Nevin pointed to these two places on the horizon, and then, of course, Ohtani and BP hit it beyond that. That is him. He loves the fact, as Phil said to us, he wants to do everything better than anybody else has ever done it. That is the underrated part of Shohei Ohtani.
And that also makes me believe he can do it in a big city. That he can do it there. He's just like, you know what? I'm going to step outside and take BP here and just put on a show when everybody is watching me. And it makes me think he can, and that maybe he would even be better under that circumstance, right? That challenge he would meet. And again, Buster, having covered New York sports for as long as you did, the ones who succeed at it, the ones who aren't fazed by it. Jeter, Eli, that's the type. And it seems like he's like that guy. It just feels that way.
There's no doubt about it. When I covered Derek Jeter, I always, thought to myself that, if he played someone in pickup basketball, he would begin that by knowing that he was going to find a way to win. He could play somebody with a better jump shot, drives to the lane better three-pointer, but Derek would be convinced that he would find a way to win. I think Ohtani is that guy as well. And this whole thing about, restrictions and him not doing that much stuff, I've actually thought that it's kind of a mistake because I think he's very much at ease. Like I've worked, the sidelines, and we've had games with them on Sunday Night Baseball and the All-Star games in the dugout for ESPN Radio. And to watch the byplay between he and the other players, like they gravitate to him. He's totally comfortable. He's a big stage Reggie Jackson type personality. There's no doubt about it. He would be completely at ease. We saw it in the WBC.
Yeah.
Like, who wants the ball in the ninth inning with Mike Trout on it at the plate? Of course it's me. That's what Ohtani's thinking.
Oh, my gosh. Well, if the Yankees don't get him, then, the Star Insurance patch is for nothing. What do you think George M. Steinbrenner III would be doing today, Buster?
He would be making side deals. He'd be acquiring small islands and delivering them to Ohtani in deals that no one would ever find out about.
Yeah?
He would be doing everything he could, signing over, family property, that sort of thing, to get Ohtani. He would be obsessed with Ohtani. There's no doubt about it. And on top of that, if he were alive today, he would be on Twitter telling us about it as he did it.
And he also would be making not-so-veiled threats at Boone and Cashman. Again, this is a team that would be in first place in the AL Central, but they're in last place in the AL East. And Judge, as we all know, might be close to be coming back. That's why I'm wondering what he would be doing right now. Because Hal, last we heard from him, he was on our friend Michael K's show talking about all they have to do is play like they played in early May. And his dad was the one who criticized Winfield for playing in October like he was playing in early May. And just hearing the word May out of a Steinbrenner's mouth caused me to just have flashbacks and how they're two different humans. So what do you think? What do you think, Buster?
Yeah, it would. I mean, Hal is so different. And by the way, that's not across the board bad either, right?
Right.
George, as you know, when he would get impetuous, he would lose his temper. He at one point he stripped a dental plan from club employees. He did really awful stuff. He drove that franchise into the ground by the late 80s because he was so impetuous and so angry. And he didn't really get reborn until he got that 2-year timeout.
Which allowed Gene Michael and Bob Watson to build the team that won all the championships, Buster.
100%. And, George was very different in the years that I covered him. He was not quite as impetuous, but, man, the stories behind the scenes on that are different. Hal is beloved by his employees, which was not the case with George. Like they really, but Hal in this moment, and it's why, for me, when I look at where they are in the standings and what they need and how the team has struggled without Judge, I do think it's a moment for an impetuous move to call the Cubs and say, yes, I want Cody Bellinger, and I'll pay the extra 20% because we need help right now because we're the New York Yankees and we have more money and more, ability to make a move more than anybody else. And I do think that if the Yankees get word that Ohtani is available, and as I said, as of this moment, he's not really available, then I do think the Yankees are going to step up and be really aggressive to try to get him for the last 2 months.
Yeah, you used the words what? Highly motivated? That was your report, Buster?
Highly motivated.
Okay. So soup to nuts right now, before I let you go, you think crystal ball it, Ohtani stays? That the Angels just don't do it?
Yeah, that's my guess. That Artie in the end will be afraid that that he doesn't want to trade this guy having the best season we've ever seen. You and I both know, and it's not quite apples to apples because of free agency and such, but the only reason why the sports world knows the name Harry Frazee was because he delivered Babe Ruth from the Red Sox to the Yankees. That's, I'm guessing, in the first paragraph of his wiki page. That's probably would be in the first 2 paragraphs of Artie's wiki page. I think it's a lot easier for him if he were to trade Ohtani. I think it's a lot easier for him politically to just wait till free agency, and if Ohtani leaves for the Dodgers, he could say, hey, it was his choice.
Buster, appreciate the time here. I know we just were Ohtani-centric and a little bit of the Yankees. That's truly what's on the forefront of my mind here. In the next couple weeks, I know things will get busier, but look for my call, and you'll have to say yes because your son will be disappointed if you say no, Buster. Okay? Let's put the pressure on.
That is 100% true, Rich. I appreciate it.
Thanks for the time. Always love our chats, Buster. Thanks again. Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.